Well, we are back with another Bible Basics. We are ending it out here with Genesis and Joseph. Starting at Genesis chapter 37, we'll go into the youngest son of Jacob and a tremendous tale here with what's going on with Joseph. Mostly this is going to be a narrative from memory because there is about 13, 14 pages until the end of Genesis. Covering just Joseph's story, and then we, of course, go into Exodus. I don't know if how much of that I'm going to cover, but we are going to finish out Genesis right here with Joseph. So we are going to start with, I'm going to read the first part of Scripture for a background, and then I'm just going to do a narrative of what's going on. There's a lot of events that take place with Joseph that's a lot easier just to explain rather than to read them. So here we go, Genesis 37. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilnah, the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. So Joseph at this point, here in Genesis 37, is a tattletale. His brothers don't like him. They're kind of messing around and not getting work done, and Joseph tells his father about it. Joseph being the son of Rachel and Jacob, whereas the other ones are by the concubines. Israel, Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age and made him a coat of many colors. So Joseph is the youngest, and he's probably spoiled, and the youngest always gets the most attention, sort of a thing. And here Israel gives him his coat. That's where this comes from, the coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and they could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and it was told to his brethren, and they hated him even more. So Joseph's thing was God would give him visions and give other people around him visions through dreams. And Joseph was able to interpret those dreams through communing with God. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. Joseph speaking. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood around about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. Basically mean you're bowing down for what I had. Obeisance. Worship. I don't know if you call it worship, but showing respect to, probably a better way to put it. And his brethren said to him, Shall indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet more for his dreams and for his words. Joseph is one of these people, I think, that no matter what, good things happen to Joseph, and people dislike him for it. And that's a really easy thing to get jealous of people or upset with people, like, he doesn't deserve that. How did he get that? And it's like somebody who just succeeds at everything they even try, like half attempt, they succeed better than you might succeed, and you've been trying your whole life. You know, like if, for instance, if you've been playing an instrument since you were a 10-year-old or something, and Joseph picks up the instrument and just starts playing way better than you ever could without putting any effort into it. And you got a little bit of a bitterness there, like, what? Hopefully, as you grow as a Christian, you can be happy for those people, happy in other people's successes, and not jealous or bitter or covetous over that. But I know those type of people who just seem to be better at everything naturally, physically, smarter than you, blessed by God. And this is who Joseph is, as we'll see when we continue on. Verse 9, And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it to his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me, looked up to me. So the sun and the moon and the 11 stars, that would be his father and mother and the children. And he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream you have dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? I'm going to worship you, my youngest son? And his brother envied him, And his father observed the saying, and his brethren went to feed their flocks in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send thee unto them. And he said to them, Here am I. So Joseph is told to go out and help his brothers. This is the part where we're going to go into narrative. So old Joseph goes out to go help his brothers. And this is apparently the land that they're feeding the flock or doing whatever they're doing is a ways, several miles from where their actual home is. And the brothers, his 11 brothers here are looking, and they see Joseph coming. And they get this idea that they should kill him because they dislike him that much. So as Joseph gets there, they apparently tie him up or something, and they decide not to kill him. Reuben says, no, let's not kill him. But they found a hole to throw him in. Now Joseph is 17, so he's not like he's a young, or like a 4-year-old or 5-year-old or whatever. He's a 17-year-old. They throw him in a hole. So it must have been a pretty big hole that a 17-year-old can't climb out of. And as they're sitting there discussing about what to do with him, apparently there's slave traders going up and down the roads in this time. Well, anyways, they found some guys, some merchant people who are willing to buy Joseph. So the brothers sold Joseph to the slaver, the Egyptian slaver, and Joseph winds up in Egypt. Now, what ends up happening here to Joseph in Egypt is he works for a guy named Potiphar. He's a servant for Potiphar. And throughout the years that he served Potiphar, Potiphar was so impressed with him that Joseph became the head general manager for Potiphar and whatever he had going on over all of his men and all of his stuff. Potiphar's wife liked Joseph and was trying to, when they were alone, trying to mess around with Joseph. And Joseph is like, no, I'm not going to go against my master. Not going to do that. And Potiphar's wife screamed and made up a story, and the guards came in, and she's saying that Joseph is trying to make advances on him, and Potiphar has Joseph thrown in the dungeon. So Joseph is thrown in the dungeon, and he's sitting there, and apparently people like him enough, again, or he's a hard enough worker, or just God impressed on people's hearts to do this, but Joseph goes from being a prisoner in the dungeon to running the jail. Somehow he is still a prisoner, mind you, still in the dungeon, but he's got a job watching the other inmates. They made him a prison guard. So he's walking around doing his prison guard deal, and he comes across 2 people who had been thrown into the dungeon, and they were distraught, and Joseph asked them, what's the problem? One of them was the chief baker for Pharaoh. The other one was the, butler. That's where that term must come from, butler. So we got the chief butler and the chief baker, and they're discussing their dreams back and forth. And Joseph says, well, dreams could be a vision from God. Why don't you tell them to me? So the butler goes through and tells his story, and Joseph says, well, in 3 days' time, Pharaoh is going to see you, and he's going to give you your old job back, and you're going to be just fine. And because of that, the baker goes, oh, geez, that sounds pretty good. My dream is similar, so hey, Joseph, what do you think about this? And Joseph says, well, in 3 days' time, Pharaoh is going to take you and have you beheaded, and then the birds are going to peck at your head. So that was in 3 days' time. Then after that, that's exactly what happened. The butler went up and got his job back, and the baker got hung. Now I have to wonder how bad your bread has to be to get hung as a chief baker. You'd think that would be one of those jobs you couldn't mess up. And I think with with putting that in there, it shows you that the Pharaoh at the time was maybe a hasty decision maker or something. I don't know. But he certainly wasn't very lenient if you're having your baker beheaded. I mean, what did that guy do? Who knows? And you're going to throw your butler in the dungeon, but then it's like, you're all right. Here you go. You can have your job back. So I think it's showing you the sort of the attitude of the Pharaoh, as if you don't please me, then you're getting beheaded. So years pass, 2 years pass. Joseph is still running the jail, apparently. Still a prisoner, but running the jail. And Pharaoh has this dream, and he doesn't understand what it means. And the butler's like, oh, yeah. He goes, hey, there's this guy I was locked up with in the dungeon, if he's still there, who could interpret dreams. And my dream came true. You might want to talk to that guy. So they bring Joseph up out of the dungeon. They get him all cleaned up and put good clothes on him, and he goes in front of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh explains the dream. It's 7... well, he has 2 different dreams, actually. I'll just go through the interpretation of what Joseph says here. Joseph says that you'll have 7 years of better than average crops, you'll have abundance, and then you'll have 7 years of famine. And the reason that you have the 2 dreams is it's an affirmation from God, telling you that this is going to happen. And Pharaoh was so pleased with Joseph that he made him, just on the basis of him interpreting the dream, made him effectively co-ruler. Pharaoh even took off his pharaoh ring and put it on Joseph's hand, and he said, anything in my land you have the power to do, the same as me. So Joseph is sort of co-pharaoh, but Joseph is not like, his lineage isn't going to be in part of any sort of kingdom or anything like that. He just has all the power. But Pharaoh is Pharaoh as far as his descendants and things will take over after him. And that comes into play later. So it comes to pass that they have their 7 years of really good abundance. And no one else knows that the 7 years of famine are coming. But Joseph is running Egypt at this point. He's taking care of everything, and Pharaoh is off having fun, I guess. So what Joseph does is all the corn and the wheat and everything that they have, he is storing it and preserving it. So when the 7 years of famine start, everybody is running to Egypt and going, oh, we need stuff here, throwing money at them. We're starving, throwing money at them. And of course, that's, Pharaoh's going to be happy because Joseph is doing an excellent job. Again, a guy who excels at everything, reads dreams, thrown in prison, becomes the prison, running the prison, taken right from the dungeon and made ruler over Egypt. Pretty amazing stuff. So we get into these 7 years, and during the 7 years, the land of Canaan, where Jacob is dwelling and his brethren are dwelling, is going through the same thing. So Jacob gets the idea to go buy from Egypt, gives the kids money, and sends them off, and doesn't send Benjamin with them because they're afraid he's going to get into trouble. He's the younger one. I don't know what age he would be, but closer to where Joseph is, and actually by the same mother than the other kids. So off they go to Egypt, and Joseph talks to them, and Joseph recognizes them and knows exactly who they are. And he has them right in his hand. He could just crush them if he wanted to. But what does Joseph do? He has a little bit of fun with them. He gives them the grain that they want and takes their money, and he accuses them of being a spy. And they say, no, we're not a spy. We come from this land. This is our father. There's 11 of us and stuff. And you say, well, you say all these things, but you need to prove it to me. So don't come back here again unless you bring your youngest sibling. Don't come back without Benjamin, is what it turns out to be. So they leave, and they go back to Jacob, and on the way back, they find out, they open their sack, and their money is still there. They have all the goods, and their money is still in the sack. And they're like, we gave them the money. I don't know. So they went back, told Jacob about it, and it came to pass again, of course, they need more food. And the sons are like, well, we can't go back there without bringing Benjamin with. And because he said they were going to, I think Joseph threatened to make them servants or throw them in the dungeon or something like that if they came back without the youngest son. So what Jacob does is say, well, look, we'll bundle up all this stuff that's like fine goods and oils and things like that they have. Bring both the money to pay for the initial that they got back, the corn and whatever supplies they were getting, as well as money to buy more. and then they also did send Benjamin with. So the second time that they go, Joseph recognizes them and sees them there, and he has them come up after purchasing their supplies and doing everything. He has them come up and actually eat with them, which is a strange thing because Jews, even at that time, were seen as like lesser people, where they wouldn't eat together or anything like that. They think that Joseph is an Egyptian. They still don't recognize him. I'm sure he's got all the Egyptian face paint stuff on and everything like that. So he sees them. They have their dinner, and after they leave, Joseph tells his guards and his servants, he goes, give them all their money back and give them all the corn and all the grain and everything that they asked for, and put all their money back in their sacks. But then also take my cup from the table and put it in Benjamin's sack. So he set him up a little bit. So he waited till his brothers got a little ways out of town, and then he called the guards and had the guards go out. Go ahead and go stop those guys, because tell them that they're stealing from me. So he went and stopped them and brought him back in, and pretty much put him through the ringer for stealing their stuff. And then Joseph couldn't contain himself anymore. He started crying and greeted his brothers, and was very happy. And their brothers were surprised, because they're like, we sold you for dead. And Joseph said, if you had not done that, I would not be in the position that I am today. Joseph would still be kicking around, herding goats, and still being, the butt of everyone's jokes, and still being picked on by all his brothers. By them getting him out of the family and out of that situation, he was able to grow and excel a lot more than he would. And Joseph was a bigger man than most people with that kind of power. But his previous prophecy had come true. His brothers did bow down before him. Now there still is another prophecy that his father will bow down before him. So everybody packs up their stuff, and Pharaoh, actually during the time that this is happening, Pharaoh is happy that Joseph's actual true family, word gets around, so the Bible says, that his family is actually, they're reuniting. And Pharaoh says, go ahead and take carts and take whatever you want and bring it, have them move from the land of Canaan into Egypt so that you can be closer to your family. So all the brothers pack up, take the carts, and they go back to Jacob, and they say Joseph is alive. Jacob is very, very happy, packs up his things, and I think Jacob at this time is like 130. He's a pretty old guy. And they all come back into Egypt, and Jacob ends up blessing the Pharaoh, which is something you don't really see. And of course they have to bow to Joseph because he's the guy running the show, more or less. But then later on in that, Joseph bows to his father. He gets the blessing again from his father. That's passed down through generations. And that is the story of how Joseph goes. In the end there, where this is how the Jews actually end up in Egypt. Okay, Pharaoh is pleased with the whole deal with what's going on, and he's happy to see Joseph is happy. And Pharaoh says, your family can have the best land, and that's in the land of Goshen, is where they set up shop. And Pharaoh says, yeah, your people and your people's people, your generations can have this land over here set aside for you. It's the best pastures because they're all dealing with livestock and stuff. So go ahead and have that, and everything's all happy. So that is how they ended up in Egypt. Joseph being a wildly heralded, fantastic guy by everybody. And Joseph eventually, of course, dies. And that's where we lead on into Exodus. What happens is Pharaoh dies and Joseph dies, and nobody remembers Joseph that comes into the Pharaoh ship, as it were. And they're dwelling, it is called the land of Ramses at this point, so it must be a Ramses family that is running Egypt. And a couple of generations down, nobody remembers Joseph, and that's where the Jews are treated more poorly and more poorly And apparently they're kind of breeding like rabbits or something, be fruitful and multiply and all that, because the Egyptians were worried that the Jews were actually taking over the land. There was more Jews than Egyptians, or they were afraid of that, which is how you get into the whole Exodus thing, where they're essentially slave labor, as well as, the bottom of the barrel citizens, not even really citizens. And that's what's leading on into there. But as I had mentioned before, Egypt and the Jews used to be best friends. Okay. All of the culmination of Egypt and Joseph throughout that whole time was several hundred years where Egypt and the Jews were very close friends. And I believe even after Exodus, Egypt doesn't really have too much of a problem with the Jews. It's really only in Exodus right there, which we'll get into a little bit in the next Bible Basics series. And with that is the story of Joseph, as well as I could get it off the top of my head. I'm sorry if I may have something a little backwards or twisted, but that is the gist of the story. Like I said, it's like 15 pages to read it, actually reading through it, bullet point by bullet point. So, next we're going to go, I'll probably do a generalization of Exodus, maybe. I think I'm going to move to actually some more story-driven things like Judges, Joshua. Well, probably do Joshua. We'll find out. So with that, we will be out of here.